In today's headlines, Houthi rebels of Yemen, Red Sea, and the America. Israel's future plans for Palestinians of Gaza. Alaskan airline Boeing plane near disaster in California. Trump case in Supreme Court of the United States and the election 2024. American Defense Secretary is in hospital. Some American states are experiencing heavy snowstorm and rain. Now the news in detail.
Welcome to Amit Shakti 58, One and Love Reports. I am Amit Goodman.
UN must hold election on world basis as soon as possible. I propose Elon Musk as president and Mohammed bin Salman as vice president. Bill Gates as external secretary or external minister. Jeff Bezos as commerce secretary or minister of world. Mark Zuckerberg as information secretary or minister of the world. YouTube honor as a homeland security secretary or minister of the world. America need one more imported president for one whole America. But due to the polarization in American people, America should be divided in 6 territories and they should have 6 imported presidents. One president for white conservatives, second president for white liberals, third president for black conservatives, fourth president for black liberals, fifth president for Latinos, sixth president for all other minorities. LGBTQ issue can be sorted out by each America individually. Imported president experiment has been done in underdeveloped countries successfully. So this can be done or tried in America also.
Tonight, the terrifying moments aboard an Alaska Airlines flight after a hole blows open in the cabin at 17,000 feet. The FAA quickly grounding nearly 200 other planes. New video shows the dramatic near disaster, a nightmare scenario for passengers. The clothes on one child sucked out, oxygen masks dropping. We hear from those on board.
I just feel the plane drop. I started freaking out.
Now the investigation into what went wrong. Is this model of plane safe? The storm system now pushing into the northeast, snow and ice triggering a series of crashes. Nearly 50 million Americans bracing for a serious snowfall. Will some major cities get their first significant snow in nearly 2 years? Why was the defense secretary's health scare kept secret? Lloyd Austin was in the ICU for 4 days this week. The Pentagon not telling the president or the public for days. We have new details. Good evening, I'm Peter Alexander in for Jose, and tonight the FAA has ordered the temporary grounding and immediate inspection of nearly 200 Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft after that terrifying mid-air emergency Friday night. Check this out. This was the scene in the skies above Portland, Oregon after an entire panel of an Alaska Airlines plane broke off mid-flight. As you can see, it left that gaping hole on the plane's left side and passengers rushing to put on oxygen masks as they stared out at the night sky. Amazingly, the Alaska Airlines flight landed safely and no one was seriously hurt, but the frightening episode is raising new concerns about the safety of that aircraft. We have 2 reports tonight, beginning with Dana Griffin.
About 8 minutes into Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 from Portland, Oregon to Ontario, California, sheer panic as a piece of the plane went missing. The Friday night sky suddenly widely visible from inside the plane as the crew scrambled to keep passengers alive. A cabin panel blew clear off this Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft. Loaded with 177 passengers and crew, the scene on board remaining eerily quiet.
A lot of people around me were a lot calmer than I would have thought for a situation like this.
An emergency landing back to Portland. Passengers applauding the crew's actions, relieved to be alive. That refrigerator-sized hole in the plane appearing to be an emergency exit is actually called a plug door. To passengers, it would look like any other window seat.
There was thankfully no one seated near the window.
Luckily, according to passengers, no one was seated in that spot.
There was a mom and a son sitting down, and the son's shirt was like completely blown off, and his body was treated red. I'm assuming due to like irritation from it.
Reaction to the incident coming swiftly with the NTSB investigating. The FAA is requiring immediate inspections of certain Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes before they can return to flight. Alaska Airlines immediately grounded its 737 MAX 9s for inspection. The airline says it has already checked a quarter of its fleet with no concerning findings, and that aircraft will return to service as their inspections are completed with our full confidence. Boeing today saying safety is our top priority and we deeply regret the impact this event has had on our customers and their passengers. The airplane manufacturer saying it will support the NTSB's investigation. A nighttime flight leaving passengers stunned by this scare in the air.
So grateful we weren't higher in the air, that more things didn't fly out, that no one flew out. I think that's incredible that we're all safe.
And Dana joins us now from LAX. Dana, what kind of impact is this having on flights today?
Yeah, Peter, according to data from FlightAware, Alaska has had to cancel more than 140 flights. Now, we can't know for sure if that's because of those grounded planes, but it is far more than any other U.S. airline, even United, which had to ground part of its fleet, so far experiencing 70 cancellations. Peter?
Dana Griffin at LAX. Dana, thank you so much. The astonishing mid-air scare is raising urgent questions across the entire aviation industry. And while a full investigation could take months, we are getting a few early details about what might have caused that Alaska Airlines emergency. Here's Jesse Kirsch.
Hours into the investigation of that gaping hole aboard the Alaska Airlines flight, tonight one expert says early signs point to a possible manufacturing issue.
This airplane was about 2 months old, and that was it, and had about less than 150 flights on it.
Former NTSB and FAA official Jeff Gazzetti says this Boeing 737 MAX 9 was modified, requiring fewer emergency exits because it had fewer passenger seats. That missing section was a covered door.
It was deactivated and then paneled over. So it's something that Alaska Airlines maintenance folks wouldn't normally be touching.
All of a sudden I heard like a big bang.
Gazzetti believes the scary scene was caused by cabin pressure pushing out on increasingly thin air as the plane climbed.
That happened really at a lower altitude than I would expect, which kind of tells me that that door was really not doing its job in keeping the pressure inside of the fuselage.
Cabin depressurization can turn deadly. In 2018, this Southwest flight experienced an uncontained engine failure, sending parts into the fuselage, destroying a window. A woman was partially sucked out and died. Following this latest Alaska Airlines incident, NTSB investigators will scrutinize the production process, aircraft maintenance, and crew response.
Should people be worried about other Boeing models that they're flying on that are recently produced models?
No, I don't think so. Based on what we know now, this does appear to be a isolated event involving one specific type of aircraft.
Tonight, dozens of those airplanes getting a closer look. Jesse Kirsch, NBC News.
Now to our other big story. The first major winter snowstorm of the season is starting to wall up the Northeast, bringing a punishing mix of snow, bitter cold, wind, ice, and rain, you name it. George Solis reports from Scranton, Pennsylvania, where snow is already starting to come in.
Tonight, the first winter storm of the new year, slamming the eastern United States. Heavy snow falling in West Virginia and Pennsylvania earlier today.
We're excited, but we're hoping we can get through it.
Then spreading north into New York City as flakes fell on the 30 Rock Christmas tree. The storm shutting down highways as it marched east. In Arkansas, this chain reaction crash, backing up traffic for miles. In Florida, a tornado spotted causing this power surge explosion. Out west, extreme weather of another kind, causing a deadly 35-car pileup near Bakersfield. Authorities believe heavy fog was to blame. At least 2 people were reportedly killed. And in Tahoe, one after another, cars sliding out of control, crashing into other vehicles because of icy conditions. Back on the East Coast, millions of people are under winter weather alerts tonight, and major cities from Philly to New York and Boston are getting ready. Here in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the Department of Transportation has wasted no time in preparing.
We have all of our manpower, equipment, and materials ready to go.
A steady stream of salt trucks and plows. This right here is just some of the 800,000 tons of salt that will be used in Pennsylvania alone, where it and crews go, determined at this command center.
We have staff working 24 hours.
Where teams track the storm and monitor roadways in real time.
It's a big game changer. We like to have the most information possible to make the most educated decision.
Back now with George, who is in Scranton. George, what are they doing there to try to keep the roads safe?
Yeah, that's right, Peter. PennDOT is reducing speed limits and implementing restrictions to keep most commercial vehicles off highways as this region races for as much as 8 inches of snow. Peter?
George Solis, thank you. And for more on where that storm is heading next, let's bring in NBC meteorologist Angie Lastman. She is in New York City's Central Park tonight. And Angie, remarkably, it has been almost 2 years since Central Park last got an inch of snow in a single day. Is this storm going to end that streak?
Good evening, Peter. That remains the big question tonight. Earlier today, New Yorkers in Central Park were treated to some snow showers. Now we transitioned over to a wintry mix with temperatures hanging out into the mid-30s. But there is another chance for us to see that nearly 700-day streak end as we get into tomorrow. Here's how the system works through the overnight hours. Widespread heavy snow across parts of New England. We'll see that rain-snow line right around the I-95 corridor. As the system moves offshore, those winds pick up. They become northerly and even heavier snow through your Sunday across parts of northern New England. That tapers off by the time Monday morning rolls around. As far as your snow totals are concerned, the highest amounts from Massachusetts to New York. Places like Boston could receive up to 10 inches of snow, Peter, with Albany set to receive up to a foot.
All right, Angie Lastman, thank you very much. And overseas now, where the war is escalating in the Middle East. You were looking at video of missiles fired from Israel into Lebanon today, striking back at the militant group Hezbollah. The two traded fire after Hezbollah accused Israel of killing a top Hamas leader. There are new questions tonight about why Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's hospitalization was kept secret from the public, and as we're learning tonight, secret from the president for several days as well. It comes amid new details that Austin was not only hospitalized this week, but was in the ICU. Ali Rafa has the very latest.
Tonight, a U.S. official confirms to NBC News that the Pentagon did not inform senior officials in the White House's National Security Council for 3 days that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had been hospitalized at Walter Reed Medical Center on New Year's Day. The news not shared with the American public until Friday, when the Pentagon announced that Austin was hospitalized for complications following a recent elective medical procedure. And NBC News has learned the 70-year-old Austin not just hospitalized, but also in the intensive care unit for at least 4 days, according to 2 senior administration officials. Asked why his stay wasn't disclosed sooner, a Pentagon spokesperson tells NBC News this has been an evolving situation in which we had to consider a number of factors, adding Secretary Austin is recovering well and he resumed his full duties. The Pentagon declining to explain what Austin's procedure was and what complications occurred. The lack of information strongly criticized.
When presidents have issues, the other cabinet members have issues, the public is notified. So there's no real justification. It's unacceptable.
America's commitment to Israel is unwavering.
The secretary in Israel as recently as mid-December, as its war with Hamas raises tension in the Middle East. On Thursday, the U.S. carried out a strike that killed an Iran-backed militia member in Iraq while Austin was hospitalized.
And Ali is in Delaware tonight traveling with the president. A U.S. official, Ali, just moments ago tells me that President Biden was not informed about Austin's hospitalization for 3 days either. And you're hearing from the secretary himself tonight in a statement. What's he say?
That's right, Peter, the defense secretary taking full responsibility for what he says were his decisions about disclosure, saying in part, quote, I recognize I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. I commit to doing better. Peter?
Ali Rafa with the very latest on that. Ali, thank you. And coming up next, new never-before-seen video from inside the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Former President Trump defending the rioters again today. Now to the secret world of retail returns and the surprising places that some of those holiday gifts that you send back really end up. NBC's Brian Chung shows us how companies and shoppers are cashing in.
If you remember returning this grill, these mouse ears, or this holiday lawn flamingo, you might be surprised to find that holiday gift you just didn't want, well, it didn't go back on the shelf.
It comes to places like this, where tens of thousands of items a day will come in, returns that will be someone else's discounted treasure.
So how big is this facility? This building is just over 100,000 square feet and has about 10,000 items coming in every day.
Jeff Rexigal is the general manager of Liquidity Services, part of a growing industry of companies that have made a business off of returns, with a boost from the holidays. Americans spent nearly $1 trillion this holiday season, and will likely return 15% of that, more than $140 billion worth of stuff. For retailers, checking returns, then putting them back on the shelves takes time, costs money, and requires more staff.
There's also an unboxing that has to happen. For retailers online only, there's a warehousing aspect.
So instead, companies like Jeff's take the stuff off their hands and then turn around and sell it. And they're busier than ever.
Sometimes we will do this as a service to retailers, and sometimes we'll just buy this inventory from them directly.
Each day, bringing literal truckloads of surprises.
So what's coming off the truck? You don't know what's in there. It could be anything under the sun.
Step 1, sort through all of those returned items.
We're walking by pallets of mostly returns. And again, this is any kind of product. We see furniture, we see home items, we see kid pools.
Step 2, inventory the items and check the quality. Then a quick photo for listing online where buyers bid.
You win the auction, then you come and pick up your items.
So you come here once a week
About once a week.
Wow.
Stacey Adam buys home products at 80 to 90% off, then resells them on Facebook.
It's kind of like treasure hunting, right?
It is. It's like Christmas every time.
Giving returns a second life is a win-win. Shoppers save big, and that unwanted stuff doesn't end up in a landfill.
Consumers really want great deals, and then they want product that they feel good about buying.
Although, once taken off the lot, all sales are final. No returns. Brian Chung, NBC News, Pittston, Pennsylvania.
And when we come back, there is good news tonight. The surprise family reunion's taking social media by storm. There is good news tonight about the love that grandkids share with their grandparents, no matter how old they get.
Hi. Well, hi there.
How is this for a surprise?
We can have a sleepover. You can have a sleepover? Yeah.
Karen and Wayne Campbell in Ohio had no idea their grown-up grandkids would be showing up at the door. One by one, all 7 of them from across the country, after weeks secretly planning this surprise sleepover.
Our favorite people in the world.
It's part of a wholesome trend that's catching on. Adult grandchildren nationwide surprising grandparents with slumber parties. From Texas to Michigan.
Hey, what the hell are you doing? You're going to sleep here tonight.
And back in Ohio.
Well, that's great. Are you serious?
To be clear, you have no idea any of this stuff is going on.
No, absolutely not.
The cousins plan coming together in a secret group chat, building up to that big night. Jammies, brownies, even Brooke's famous buffalo chicken dip.
You don't mind, do you? Oh my gosh, no.
Tori Halen had hustled back from college in South Carolina.
They're so deserving of our time in every way.
What were you thinking when you saw that door open and they just started coming in?
I was so confused and so blessed that these 7 kids thought so much of us that they wanted to spend another sleepover with us after so many years of doing the same thing with them.
Then I hear the emotion in your voice. Why?
Because they're so dear to us, and they always make time for us, and they're the center of our world, and they have been for 28 years.
That's when this tradition began, when they were just kids, sharing snacks, swapping stories, and whipping up treats.
They really just spoiled us and made us feel so loved.
So this is all the plans all along?
Yeah.
You guys are something else.
The perfect gift.
Oh my gosh, this is...
An unforgettable surprise.
Oh, now look what you... I know.
What does this experience tell us about the power of family?
With that night, that they would find the time to share their love with us that we've come to treasure so much. I just wish everybody could have some of that, what we've had over the years. It's so important, and they are priceless to us, just priceless.
What a great way to make new memories. That is NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. I'm Peter Alexander. We thank you so much for watching. Have a good night. Tonight, in-flight fright. A door on an Alaska Airlines Boeing jet rips off the aircraft, leaving a gaping hole at 16,000 feet.
I heard like a big bang.
The cabin depressurized, forcing passengers to grab oxygen masks.
And the pilot just, prayed to God, he got us landed.
The plane, nearly new. Now the FAA taking action, grounding others just like it across the country. We'll have the latest on the investigation. Also tonight, winter storm alert. At least 40 million people along the East Coast are in the path of freezing rain, flooding, and snow. But there's an even bigger cross-country threat on its heels. That could impact travel next week. We'll have the details. It's been 3 years since the January 6th insurrection. Tonight, stunning newly released video from the deadly standoff inside the Capitol. I'm a sailor! And countdown to caucus.
I'm Ed O'Keefe in Iowa. As Donald Trump faces legal issues across the country, a new CBS News poll reveals whether Americans think he should appear on the ballot.
And later, Rocking the Boat, the program helping kids navigate life's choppy waters.
I think like the adrenaline pump you get out of it is like incredible.
This is the CBS Weekend News from Washington with Adriana Diaz.
Good evening, Adriana is off. I'm Robert Costa. Tonight, the Northeast is in the midst of the first big snowstorm of the season. A wintry mix is hitting the region, bringing snow, rain, and icy roads. Up to a foot of snow is expected along a huge stretch of the east, from Pennsylvania to Maine. But first, we begin with the investigation into an Alaska Airlines jet that had a section of its fuselage blow out mid-flight. CBS's Elise Preston is in Los Angeles with the details.
Robert, good evening. Now, the FAA is temporarily grounding and requiring immediate inspections of about 171 Boeing 737 MAX 9 airplanes after that flight's plane lost a chunk of its shell in midair, forcing an emergency landing in Portland.
Horror in the air as a plug door blew off this plane while it was 16,000 feet in the sky. The 171 passengers and 6 crew members on board the aircraft Friday evening were headed to Ontario, California. Videos taken from inside the plane show passengers appearing calm.
I heard like a big bang, and then I looked to my left, and there's this huge chunk, part of the airplane, just like missing.
There was a kid in that row who his shirt was sucked off him and out of the plane.
No serious injuries were reported.
Could this have been much worse?
If this had happened at higher altitude, the odds are it could have been a whole lot worse.
CBS News travel editor Peter Greenberg.
This still seems like an anomaly, because if it's actually a design fault with the entire fleet, you have a very serious problem.
The plane had only been in service for a couple months. Tonight, the FAA is ordering inspections of that airliner and dozens more like it.
It's going back to the assembly line itself to see what may have happened from day one on that assembly line to create a situation in which this kind of incident could occur. It's going to take some time.
Alaska and United Airlines are the only U.S. carriers that use the 737 MAX 9s. Both airlines are warning passengers to expect delays as the planes undergo inspections. Robert?
Elise Preston, thanks. Now to the snowstorm. Winter storm warnings and advisories are in place from the Appalachians to New England. People are bracing for up to a foot of snow in some parts. CBS's Mickey Dementri is in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Snow started falling here just a few hours ago, but already it's quite the wintry mess. Locals here are used to snow, but they say they haven't seen a storm like this in quite a while.
Warnings went up as the snow came down across the Northeast. Big flakes fell in western Pennsylvania, and at the opposite end of the state, we found travelers surprised at the storm's intensity. Do you remember last time it snowed?
No, not this. It's bad.
The storm has been marching east, blanketing roads in Winslow, Arkansas, including this bridge where several tractor trailers collided. Communities in the Northeast have been preparing for days, crews readying plows and pre-treating roads.
This is their Super Bowl. They live for the big storms, and this is as big as it gets because it's our first storm, so we're kind of excited.
Boston could get a half foot of snow, and parts of New England could get double that. The storm could end a snowfall drought in several Northeast cities, including New York. City streets could see an inch or more, an amount not seen for almost 2 years.
We're expecting our operation is largely going to be focused on spreading salt on every street in the city, just so that the roads don't get slippery.
Snow and rain are expected to fall through the overnight on large swaths of the Northeast.
Don't go out unless you need to go out. Stay off the road.
Many heeded the warning, clearing supermarket store shelves ahead of time.
Milk, bread, of course, the usual. And I don't want to leave my house on Sunday if I don't have to.
Crews in the Northeast say they're grateful the storm is hitting this weekend when fewer people need to go places. But Robert, a second, even more powerful storm is expected to bring ice, snow, rain, and even strong winds from Texas to the Northeast by midweek.
Mickey Dementri, thank you. Now to the forecast. For more on what's going on tonight and next week, let's bring in meteorologist Alex Wilson from our partners at the Weather Channel.
All right, Robert, well, first I want to tell you about today's storm. We're getting big snow in interior parts of the Northeast. Areas like New York City, it's rain for you guys. We're going to continue to see the rain, the snow, the wind overnight and into tomorrow morning. By tomorrow afternoon, things begin to wind down. Still some interior snow for parts of the Northeast. Now, the heaviest snow focused along the I-81 corridor and points east. But again, big cities like New York and Philadelphia missing out on this one. And then the next system waiting in the wings. This is going to be a powerhouse storm. Significant severe weather along the Gulf Coast. Heavy snow, blizzard conditions possible in the plains, but very warm into the Northeast. And rain, and a lot of rain coming for areas that have just seen some snow. So there is a significant concern, unfortunately, already several days out, Tuesday into Wednesday, we could be looking at likely flooding in the Northeast.
Thanks, Alex Wilson. And weather is to blame for a deadly and massive 35-vehicle pileup on an interstate highway in California. 2 people were killed and 9 more were injured in the wrecks near Bakersfield, California. Police blame the crashes on foggy conditions. At least 18 tractor trailers were among the vehicles involved. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear arguments next month over a decision by the Colorado Supreme Court finding former President Donald Trump ineligible for the presidency due to his conduct around the January 6th insurrection and blocking him from the state's primary ballot. CBS's Ed O'Keefe is on the campaign trail near Des Moines, Iowa tonight. Ed, good evening. Are these legal issues having an impact on Trump's campaign?
Bob, the former president, continues to say he's confident that he'll ultimately prevail, and word of even more legal challenges continues to embolden his supporters in this first-in-the-nation state. On the question of whether or not he should appear on ballots across the country, a new CBS News poll out tonight shows a narrow majority of Americans would keep him on them. But you'll notice a sharp partisan divide. The poll shows 8 in 10 Democrats would take him off ballots, 9 in 10 Republicans would keep him on them. And as justices prepare for the case, Trump has issued a warning.
I just hope we get fair treatment, because if we don't, our country's in big, big trouble. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? I think so.
So, Ed, where does the race stand overall?
Well, Trump maintains a double-digit lead according to recent polls, and he's overseeing a far more disciplined, organized operation than the first time he ran here in Iowa back in 2016. His opponents are in a mad dash to finish at least in second place behind him. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley are set to spend most of next week here in Iowa, and they're both set to debate each other. They're both calling on the former president to join them on the debate stage, but he continues to refuse to do so, calling his one-time supporters turned primary opponents disloyal. Bob?
Ed O'Keefe in Iowa. Thanks. Today marks 3 years since the violent siege of the U.S. Capitol. This morning, the FBI arrested 3 fugitives wanted in connection with the attack in what's been the largest criminal investigation in American history. Tonight, in newly released video, we see Capitol police officers calmly fending off protesters as they tried to enter the House chamber, while 2 Republican congressmen admonished the rioters for what they're doing. As Scott McFarland reports, the conspiracy theories and political divisions that gave rise to January 6th persist and raise fears about the future.
The officers were outnumbered and overwhelmed by a mob, some of whom fought police with chemical spray, makeshift weapons, poles, and fists.
What stands out to you most when you think back to 3 years ago today?
Oh, it's just how it came out of nowhere.
Deputy Chief Thomas Lloyd was in the thick of it.
You never forget that.
It still hangs on.
Oh yeah, every day, every day.
Police repelled the siege, after which the U.S. Justice Department launched an investigation unlike any in its history.
This is not only the largest DOJ criminal investigation ever, it's probably the most successful too.
Scott Frederickson is a former federal prosecutor.
They have pretty much a perfect record so far in all of their prosecutions.
The feds have charged nearly 1,200 people, more than half of whom have pleaded guilty. Dozens more have been convicted at trial, including every single defendant to face a jury. Some who face charges remain fugitives, and the FBI has yet to catch whoever left live pipe bombs near the Capitol that day. As former President Trump is raising the prospect of pardons for rioters if he were to retake office.
I call them the J6 hostages. Not prisoners, I call them the hostages.
Roiling tensions and enraging the family of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who died of a stroke one day after being assaulted stopping the mob.
They broke the law. They broke several laws. They're on camera doing it. They were convicted in the court and sitting in jail because of it.
And this unprecedented investigation is about to get larger. Federal prosecutors say they expect dozens more arrests in the coming months. Scott McFarland, CBS News, the Capitol.
President Biden has accepted House Speaker Mike Johnson's invitation to deliver the State of the Union address on March 7th. The president responded to Johnson's invitation on X, writing, "Looking forward to it, Mr. Speaker. It will be Johnson's first State of the Union as Speaker and will serve as a critical platform for Mr. Biden to make his case for re-election to the country." Secretary of State Antony Blinken is en route to the Middle East again, his fourth trip there since fighting between Israel and Hamas broke out on October 7th. The State Department says Blinken is aiming to prevent the conflict from spreading while expanding humanitarian aid and reducing civilian casualties. Meanwhile, the Israeli military says it has completely dismantled Hamas's military framework in northern Gaza. CBS's Ian Lee has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Good evening, Robert. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Turkey to a Middle East in trouble. He'll be playing the role of firefighter as he tries to extinguish the conflicts popping up in the region.
The worst fighting in Israel's north in nearly 20 years risks a new war. Today, Lebanese militants Hezbollah fired more than 60 rockets across the border. Israel responded with punishing airstrikes and artillery. Hezbollah says its attack is revenge for the assassination of a top Hamas commander in Beirut this week. In Yemen's capital, Iranian-backed Houthi rebels remain defiant in the face of Washington's warning to stop attacking commercial shipping. "We will make the sea as we made the land, a graveyard for America and Israel," says this man. Today, the U.S. Navy announced it shot down a Houthi drone near multiple ships, and CBS News has learned the Pentagon is preparing plans to hit back at the Houthis, including strikes against targets in Yemen. Hamas's brutal attack 3 months ago sparked the crisis. In southern Gaza, Israeli forces advance. Their main focus now is Khan Yunis. Airstrikes pound the city. Nearby, Palestinians dig a new cemetery. The old ones are already full. Israeli troops hunt for Hamas in southern Gaza while searching for hostages. Gal Dalal attended the Nova Music Festival with his brother Guy when the militants attacked.
What is it like coming back here?
It's a weird feeling.
Gal got away, Guy didn't. Taken by Hamas. Time now stands still with his brother in captivity.
My brother is the whole world for me, and I will see him again, I know it.
More than 100 hostages remain in Gaza, Robert, including 6 Americans. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will likely work for their release while also pushing to get more desperately needed humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Thank you, Ian Lee. Straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, we'll have the latest on Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's recently disclosed time in the hospital. A place where rocking the boat is encouraged, even expected. We're learning more about Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's time in the hospital. Austin was admitted to Walter Reed Medical Center on January 1st for complications related to a prior elective procedure. CBS News has learned that the President's National Security Council and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan were unaware of his hospital stay until Thursday. During part of that time, the 70-year-old was in the intensive care unit, and his duties were partly assumed by Deputy Kathleen Hicks. In a statement, Austin said he's on the mend and takes full responsibility for his decisions about disclosure. Still ahead on the CBS Weekend News, a celebration of African-American culture through the written word. A new bookstore in Florida is getting attention for highlighting black history and culture, even as the state has curtailed the way it's taught in the classroom and even limited some books over race. CBS's Christian Benavidez has details.
In Tampa's Black English Bookstore, a celebration of African-American culture is also a refuge.
Every book is liberated. Set up here.
Gwendolyn Henderson is the store's owner.
When I walk into a space, I really need to see myself.
From cooking to nonfiction to
mind your business, taking care of yourself.
Henderson, a public school teacher, has witnessed the growing culture wars over books and race. Current Florida law allows parents to challenge books over perceived indoctrination, race-based teachings, sexual content, or gender identity. PEN America, an advocacy group tracking educational censorship, found more school books were banned in Florida than any other state. Is this a response to that?
I'm a rebel, so I cannot deny that.
A complaint over indoctrination got Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb, restricted to middle schoolers and up in one Miami-Dade public school.
We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it. I mean, people will destroy a place or a people rather than to be accepting of diversity.
According to PEN America, there have been over 1,400 cases of book bans across 33 school districts in Florida. Troy Johnson tracks black-owned bookstores. Put into context for me what this bookstore signifies, given what's been happening in Florida.
It's almost defiant. No excuses is going to portray our stories and sell our books.
On the 1930 census, it has just a list of people, including my family members, and no one could read and no one could write. And that just was incredible to me.
Henderson, the only black member of the Tampa City Council, wants others to learn their history, even if it's outside the classroom. Christian Benavidez, CBS News, Tampa, Florida.
Next on the CBS Weekend News, rocking the boat in hopes of finding calm waters. Finally tonight, the phrase rocking the boat usually implies someone is causing trouble by pushing the limits. But for some students in New York, it's about pushing through the waves of life. CBS's Tarika Duncan explains.
The adrenaline pump you get out of it is like incredible.
17-year-old Victoria Murillo sails along the Bronx River with confidence and ease.
I've seen people come out here and they're like, oh my god, this is like really scary, especially
Like that right there?
I was very shy before rocking the boat, and the main thing I apply now is communication, like being assertive and like letting people know that I'm here and that I have a voice.
You adjust your head to that angle, finish your footing correctly.
She's one of 900 students who have joined Rocking the Boat. It's a nonprofit organization teaching middle and high schoolers how to build boats, sail them,
You got it?
and the importance of protecting the water quality of the river.
Why do you have to boost the whole thing?
Adam Green founded the program 25 years ago.
I started this as a volunteer project when I was in college, and so this is still my first job out of college. It's changed a whole lot.
It's located in one of New York City's poorest neighborhoods in the Bronx, which is on purpose, says Green, who always envisioned working with underserved youth.
Where does that come from?
In me, I guess it comes from my parents. I was very fortunate to have parents who were always focused on equity, on trying to allow everybody to have opportunities.
33-year-old Juan Pablo is a director of sailing.
What is your hope for these children that you're interacting with on a regular basis? We want kids to come through here and learn about themselves and what they want to do in the future, set up goals for the future. So our hope for them is to be able to become better people. Sailing and environmental education and boat building are just a mechanism to get them there.
Okay, ready to attack?
All right, ready?
And by the looks of it, students like Victoria Murillo are headed in the right direction. Tarika Duncan, CBS News, New York.
And that's the CBS Weekend News for this Saturday. I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Fallon, along with Lisa Booth, Guy Benson, and Alicia Acuna, and welcome to the Big Weekend Show. Okay, the big story tonight, the countdown is on to the Iowa caucus. We're just 9 days away from the official start to the 2024 election season, and all of the Republican hopefuls are putting on their boxing gloves. Fox News national correspondent Bill Mallusion is in Des Moines tonight.
Well, as these GOP candidates make their final push in the state of Iowa with days left to go, today also happens to be the 3-year anniversary of the January 6th Capitol riots, and that's something President Biden highlighted in a campaign speech he made yesterday. He went after former President Trump, called him a threat to democracy. Well, today, President Trump shot back at Biden at a campaign speech right here in Iowa. Take a listen.
This beautiful child, this young man, how old is he, 3? I would vote for him over Biden because he's more intelligent. Look, the kid's 3 years old. He's got better judgment.
In the meantime, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, they have been going at each other in recent days as they're both essentially fighting for second place in the polls behind Donald Trump. However, both of them have also upped their attacks on Donald Trump because he is the front leader. Take a listen.
When it comes to Trump, he can call me anything to tax hike Haley. I've never raised a tax.
You know, Trump's the candidate. 2024 is going to focus on his legal issues, criminal trials, January 6th, and really all these things from the past.
And as for Haley, she has seen her numbers surging in the polls in recent months. She's had good momentum. However, she's also had a string of gaffes in recent days. She flubbed an answer about slavery in the Civil War. She said New Hampshire voters would have to correct what Iowa does. Then she made a comment about changing personalities from Iowa going into New Hampshire. In the meantime, former President Trump remains the man to beat in this race. He is dominating majorly when it comes to the polls. Every poll you look at, he has decided to skip all of the debates this campaign cycle. His rationale being voters know him, who he is, what he stands for, and what his policies are, and it's up to his challengers to beat him. And back out here, it is expected to be a very cold night on the night of the 15th when the caucuses are. Potentially -7 degrees as a low. President Trump said during a rally today, he feels Iowans don't care. They are still going to show up and vote in huge numbers. We'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Bill Mallusion, the man with the best hair in cable news. You heard me, Doozy. Guy Benson, I will start with you, my radio buddy. I gotta keep it in the family here. Obviously, this is a big event, okay? This is when the live ammo starts to fly. Who do you think has the most to lose going into Iowa?
First, I'll say, especially for people in our business, I cannot wait for the voting to finally actually start.
Thank you.
For a year, we've been sitting around tables like this saying, well, the voters haven't even had their say yet, and that will finally come to an end in Iowa, and then a week later, roughly, in New Hampshire as well. So, let's go. Let's look at actual results. Look, Donald Trump is clearly in the pole position. You look at the surveys out of that state, and his numbers are enormous. So he's the man to beat. It does not appear to be close. Ron DeSantis, I would say, has big upside if he can surprise, but big downside if he underperforms and loses by a large margin, because he has worked extremely hard in that state. He has poured a lot of time and energy. I admire the campaign that they're running there. They've developed a really good ground game, but the ground game only really matters if it's a marginal race to put you over the top. If you're down by 30, it doesn't really matter. So if you put all of those eggs into a basket early like Iowa, and then you don't impress, that is a tough spot for his campaign, and they're looking to avoid that, obviously.
That's a great point. You know who I think the most excited person is about this caucus finally happening? The Iowa TV viewer. Because they have not been able to change a channel for 2 years without watching a political commercial everywhere you look. But one of the things Trump is battling in addition to the other candidates is, of course, this effort to get him removed from the ballot. Ron DeSantis weighed in on that. I want to toss to that before I come to you, Lisa.
Okay.
I do think they're going to have to rein this in because I just think if you look at it, it just becomes too different. You could make a case, and I'm actually looking at this in Florida now. Could we make a credible case that Biden, because of the invasion of 8 million?
Wow. Now here's my theory on this whole hullabaloo.
I almost feel like the Democrats are doing Trump a favor because he's been able to campaign less. It's almost like, you know how Biden had a COVID variant to keep him off the campaign and the surrogates do the talking. In a roundabout way, Trump has been able to avoid a lot of his potential downside because he's been basically put into almost a sympathetic light. Do you think the Democrats are helping Trump right now?
Well, I mean, it certainly is earned media for him. I mean, they did this to him in 2016 as well, where, you know, in the primary, the media talked about him so much that he got all this earned media, and they're doing it again. So yeah, I think it's certainly helping him. But, you know, to what Governor DeSantis was saying, why not? Why can't Florida take Biden off the ballot, right? I mean, that's the inevitable path that this sets us on, what Democrats are trying to do in states like Colorado. And, you know, and I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I think the Supreme Court, it's going to be 9-0. I've got a lot of faith in it. I don't. I mean, you've got someone like Ketanji Brown who couldn't even say what a woman is. And we're expected to think that she's going to do the right thing, that she's going to do the honorable thing, that she's going to do the truthful thing. I think the ultimate goal of this is to use this to undermine the Supreme Court even further. I mean, we know that's what Democrats want to do. They want to pack the courts. They want to fundamentally change this country. But, you know, yeah, why not fight fire with fire? Why not Republican states follow the same course?
Well, you make a point about someone not being able to define a woman. I think we're struggling right now to define an insurrection because they're using that as a justification to get him off the ballot. I want to play this off from Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold before I come to you, Alicia. Here it is.
I do think that the Colorado Supreme Court got it right. Donald Trump incited an insurrection. The U.S. Constitution prohibits candidates who engage in insurrection from being on the ballot, and so he is disqualified. I just fundamentally disagree that there should be some carve-out in the Constitution for the president. Donald Trump should not be above the law, above the Constitution. A president should not have that type of power. That is what would really lead us to a downward spiral and a degrading of democracy like we've never seen before in this country.
Now, she has a pretty substantial argument if, in fact, he has been charged of that crime or accused of that crime. And this is my... Or convicted. Oh, convicted. The point is, we're a long way from the end zone on this one.
Isn't it crazy we're even having this conversation?
Yes, of course
what
it
they're
is.
trying to do to him?
And that's what I wanted to come to you on. Okay, we keep getting sold this idea that these are our protectors. And then, of course, we've got to get Trump out of the way because, you know, he's going to ruin everything. And their justification for getting Trump out of the way is that they can ruin everything first. You dig? You can't protect democracy by destroying it, as we know. I can't protect your home from an arson by burning it down. But that's what they're doing. So is this just desperation? Do they not hear themselves? What do you attribute this to?
It's entirely political. I interviewed Secretary Jenna Griswold when she first took office, and her focus was keeping the ballot secure. That's really all she talked about. In the years since, she has become entirely political, and it has become very troubling for voters who aren't Democratic voters in the state of Colorado. And I think that it's harming the system entirely across the country when they see Secretaries of State who actually have part of their responsibility to hold very dear the vote, and to think that they could be participating and taking that away from people, I think is incredibly troubling.
Very good point. Let's talk to Nikki Haley for a second. We got to stop from her talking about how candidates change personalities after the Iowa caucuses. Listen to this guy.
If you were president, would you also encourage Republicans to look at their nominating calendar? Should Iowa still be first on the Republican
Well, it's really important. Look, the structure of it is really pretty amazing. That Iowa starts it. You change personalities, you go into New Hampshire, and they continue it on. And by the time it gets to South Carolina, it gets bigger going into Super Tuesday.
Now, DeSantis and Vivek were all over this guy. Let's get their reaction, and then I'll come to you.
If you want a historical establishment politician that historically recites what the standard talking points are supposed to be on a given day, changes personalities when necessary, keeps the foreign war machine humming, and wants a domestic surveillance state like we had in the Bush-Cheney era post 9/11, I'm not your candidate.
And no, your votes do not need to be corrected by any other state. I don't care what Nikki Haley says.
See, some of this guy reminds me of just how boring traditional politics are. Because this isn't like the most inflammatory. We've had Hillary call half the country a basket full of deplorables. Biden's called them semi-fascists. So give me a percentage. What percentage of this is a little bit of Nikki Haley missing the strike zone, and what percentage of it is her opposition just trying to ratchet up animosity? Probably about half and half, right? 50. And so they have to take umbrage to say, look, she's insulting these voters. The question truly is, do the voters themselves feel insulted? And they will make that voice heard one way or another very, very soon. You kind of get the point that she's making, especially on the personality point. If you're running for president, you can present a little bit differently in Iowa than New Hampshire. These are different electorates. You tweak your messaging maybe a little bit, but to say you change personalities is probably not the way that you want to put it. And look, if she's all in on New Hampshire, which I get, if that's her strategy, all in on New Hampshire, and she's closing in the polls on Trump, I get it. Then it's fine to make the joke about Iowa, saying they start and then New Hampshire, you guys correct it if you're pandering explicitly to New Hampshire. But her campaign is insisting she's still really playing in Iowa. But I'm not sure if that's going to fly anymore.
She said it out loud. She said what so many politicians know. They play to the room, with the exception of Chris Christie and Donald Trump, because Chris Christie fights with the room, like he doesn't care. But politicians, they play to the room. They do.
Where this hurts her, though, is she has a history of flip-flopping. I mean, the thing I cannot stand about Nikki Haley is she has a finger to the wind. Which way is the wind blowing? What's my position today? What's my position tomorrow? What position do all these billionaires who are donating my campaign want me to take? Which is why they're doing it, because she's a status quo politician who can be purchased. So that's why this hurts her and undermines her, because it's part of this broader narrative that she's finger to the wind, flip-flop, you know what I mean? Like, she has no roots. But, you know, inevitably, look, this primary could be over really, really early. Like, maybe even by the time we get to South Carolina, considering Trump's up by 20 to 30 in, you know, the big three of the first four contests. So we'll see.
Wild times in Iowa.
Still watch.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and more.
Iowa, welcome to you both. Avery, let's go ahead and start with you, because we saw President Biden at that campaign event this week, and it seems like the message seems to be about threats to American democracy. Is that message going to land for voters?
Right, well, this definitely was not a policy speech. This was really President Biden taking direct aim at former President Trump and what he calls MAGA extremism on the anniversary of the January 6th attack at the Capitol. And so this is something that we're going to hear President Biden say throughout the campaign. We know that former President Trump has denied any wrongdoing as it pertains to January 6th. But is this enough to galvanize voters? The Biden campaign thinks it is. But we do know when we look at polling that the most important issues to voters as they decide who they're casting ballots for is matters of the economy and inflation. And I think the Biden campaign knows that. So I think in addition to talking about matters of democracy, they're also going to have to leave in some of these other issues like inflation and the economy.
And Mary Alice, let's go to you there in Iowa, because sadly this week there was another mass shooting, this time at a school there. As Republicans are on the campaign trail ahead of the Iowa caucuses, we saw the issue of guns in the political spotlight once again. What are the candidates saying?
Yeah, with that shooting just about 40 minutes from here. Students returning their first day back to class after the holidays. Trump last night offered his condolences, but he said, I have to get over it. We have to move forward. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis asked multiple times. They said they are not in favor of any new restrictions on any kind of restrictions on any access to any guns. I mean, these are candidates that have not wanted in any way to add new laws. They have talked about hardening schools, adding security to schools. Nikki Haley talked about mental health, but I will say she hasn't offered a lot of specifics on how she would address mental health. Democrats, they are running on this issue. They are bringing it up constantly. The White House yesterday put out a statement saying that 500 illegal gun purchases have been stopped because of stricter new background checks put in place by this administration. They are worried about this issue. They are bringing up, too, the fact that gun deaths are rising so sharply among kids, now the leading cause of death among children with. And Avery, let's bring you back in. It's been a big week. We also saw the Supreme Court add to their docket that case from Colorado about whether former president should be on the state's ballot. When will we know more about this, and how closely are voters watching, or should they be watching this? Right, well, the Supreme Court is going to hear arguments in this on February 8th, and the timing here is really important because state primaries will be underway. And so these legal challenges and what the Supreme Court is going to rule could have an impact on legal challenges to Trump's eligibility in states across the country. Now, there are vocal critics of the president, like Chris Christie, who's running against him for the GOP nomination, who say that these legal challenges could be an argument for Trump to make himself a martyr or to make himself a victim of political persecution. But, when we look at polling, we know that former President Trump has dominated in this race so far, and so it's hard to tell whether Trump is garnering any additional support from these cases.
But we know you're going to be watching that. And Mary Alice, let's bring you back in here because do you see any surprises coming out of Iowa? That's where you are. Trump last night telling voters he is worried that his lead in the polls, they will just stay home.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I think that there absolutely could be surprises here in Iowa. Love them or hate them, the caucuses are interesting. Voters all in one room hashing it out together. And you're right, Trump is clearly worried that people might stay home and not come out to vote because of the polling showing him so far ahead. But I talked to the Republican State Party chair here. He said that people have a renewed sense of urgency to caucus. The people who are planning not to caucus for Trump, they want to come out and send a message to the rest of the country. Gio?
All right, Mary Alice and Avery, thank you so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights.
This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Gaza, the death toll from Israel's 90-day bombardment has topped 22,600, with another 7,000 people reported missing, presumed dead. Health officials in Gaza say Israel killed at least 162 Palestinians over the last 24 hours as the IDF intensifies its attacks on refugee camps in Central and South Gaza, areas once deemed by Israel to be safe. Doctors in Gaza described horrific conditions inside the few...
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.